All with us. And this is Cheryl Allen, Deputy Superintendent, and would like to turn this meeting over to Superintendent Arntzen to get us started.
Thank you all for being on this call today. I know your summer is busy and we're just on that front range of summer. So there are three things now. And we have a great opportunity for this. It's with a grant process for underserved 4-year-olds as well as those that are in poverty. So there'll be more information on that. And then of course, we'll direct you to the website if you have any questions. Regarding finances, and of course, CARES dollars, wanting to make sure that if you have any questions at all, this would be a time to ask for anything in the deployment of CARES dollars, and possibly more specifically where it attunes to counties in homeschool. And that would be that equitable share part. And I have an expert with Ken Bailey that's going to be on the phone, along with Jay Phillips, who is the one who has opened up those opportunities in grants. And then summer nutrition. I mean, this is what this is about, and not just in the waivers that we've received because of COVID, but hoping that we can serve our children nutrition, quality nutrition, many, many different ways. And we're looking at hopefully that these waivers won't just happen in summer, but they will be continuing forward in schools when schools reopen. So with that, I do believe we're going to be starting with Upstart.
Hi, thank you, Superintendent. Thank you so much for making a little bit of time for us to share some this message with the superintendents. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Isaac Troyo. I'm the Director of Implementations for the Waterford Upstart program in Montana. I'll share my screen here so everybody can see me. I wanted to take a moment to share with you this opportunity. Danny McCarthy recently sent out a message from the Office of Public Construction, making you all aware of this resource. But I want to take a moment to give you a little bit more information and provide the opportunity for you to ask questions if you have any. So Waterford Upstart is being made possible through a grant through the U.S. Department of Education, and it's a kindergarten readiness initiative. It's meant to help your preschoolers, that's children going into your kindergarten doors in fall of 2021, prepare with a reading or a math and science curriculum. So it's reading or math and science. It's a randomized controlled trial, and we provide a computer and internet for families all across the state. It's about a 200 participant pilot. We're only at 53 families registered currently for the state of Montana, but it is a 2-year pilot. So the first year will serve 200 families across the state, and the second year will serve 400 families statewide. So what we want to do is to help prepare your children academically for them to be ready to participate and be engaged in the kindergarten classroom. And so what we do is we provide this software for them to use in their home. Again, we'll provide the technology for them to be able to access the software. It's 15 to 20 minutes a day. It's a short enough period of time for children to be able to focus on the program and for the software to adapt to the child's needs and present what needs to be learned according to the child's needs. But it's also frequently enough for those concepts to be assimilated. The program began in the state of Utah about 11 years ago. We're serving close to 1/3 of Utah's preschoolers, and the U.S. Department of Education has given us funding to extend this program to Montana as well. So we'd love the opportunity to have your families participate. We are prioritizing families who live in rural areas, those who come from low-income households, and those who are English language learners. So if you have any students who are at risk or any families that you know, we do encourage you to sign up. Superintendent Arntzen is going to give out information as to where you can find us on our website. It's really easy. Google waterfordupstart.org or go onto our web page to register. I believe the superintendent is going to email out the flyer. But we are encouraging families, rather, I would encourage you superintendents to share this message with your schools, with your principals as soon as possible. We would like to get families identified and registered before the end of August. I know that that's kind of a heavy push. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID and how things are going to roll out, but this is a really good way while children are in the home to get them academically prepared. And I do just want to say briefly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, we don't want to take any resources away from anyone. We're not trying to replace any of the things that families are already doing. We know that families are, maybe benefiting from district pre-K, or maybe they're going to Head Start. This program is in addition to anything that children are already doing, or as a supplement in areas where maybe there isn't access to high quality early learning programming. So with that, I'll just say there are about 200 slots available. We would love for you to communicate that to your families. Next year, we will be serving 400 children in the state of Montana. And this is a great resource. It's totally free. Superintendent, is there anything else you'd like me to cover?
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. I'm looking at the chat box, and Lisa is asking, is North Dakota participating?
Yes, North Dakota is participating, absolutely. So we've got Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Idaho. Those are the 5 Great Plains states that have participated in this grant, and North Dakota is one.
Thank you very much. And the other part of this is not a replacement of universal pre-K or any of the blended models that might be in any of the communities that any of you serve. This is an addition, and we have been working on this, and this is something, as you had said, that Utah has developed for numerous years, even pre-COVID. So I do know as a teacher, 23 years, that a digital device does not replace that relationship of school and that relationship of that quality educator. But this is an enhancement for family in literacy and in math as well. So Montana is beginning this. More information will be coming to you for that. So any other questions for Isaac? If not, we're available here. I can easily pass through information when those documents come to you that will be after this call that we have. Isaac, thank you very much. Stay well. Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you. All righty. Well, let's discuss the school finance at this time. So I have our experts, Mr. Bailey and Mr. Phillips.
Hi, this is Ken. I'll mention that I've been going through the ESSER fund applications, mostly because again, there are 2 sides to the grant. The first is the main ESSER allocation that was done on the basis of Title I. The second is for related services. For the main ESSER grant, up through yesterday, there were about 50 applications, and I had gone through and looked at all of those. There's about another dozen that have come in today, and I'm in the process of looking at those. And I'll address any questions if anyone has, but since I think you guys are mostly associated with the co-ops and that side of the grant, I'm going to let Jay take over and describe what we're doing in e-grants with that.
Good afternoon, everybody. So as Ken had mentioned, there's actually 2 pots of money or 2 applications that we're going to have out on the e-grant system. And so if you remember, Montana got just a little over $41 million to allocate out. 90% of that, or $37.1 million, was to be distributed out to the schools. Superintendent Artson did take a little over $600,000 of her administrative set aside so that we could ensure that everybody at least got a minimum of $10,000. And so that first little over $37 million is the primary ESSER fund grant, which we used the Title I basis allocation as a basis for distributing those funds. And then the second pot is $3 million that Superintendent Artson took out of her set-asides again, made that available for a second pot so the cooperatives could also participate in receiving some of the funding. And so you'll see out there, there's the primary ones for you guys will be the related services grant, is what it's called. And again, a portion of that, based on the equitable services calculation, goes out to each one of the co-ops themselves. And so I don't, pretty high level, right now, like Ken said, we're having good activity. Timing of things, the applications will be closed on June 30th. And we're trying to make it available on June 22nd through June 24th that the recipients can submit a cash request, and so they can get immediate funding in this year. And then they can continue to do cash requests throughout the next 2 years as this grant actually ends September 30th of 2022. And so real high level, but if I, again, here to entertain any questions that anybody may have.
Perfect. Any questions for Jay or Ken?
This is Michelle Halberg from the Gallatin-Madison Special Ed Co-op. Matt Henry is my county soup joining me today. We sent a note off to you, Ken, about calculation of that private non-public page that obviously uploaded from the public school in which the private school sat. Is that an error, or is that correct? That page didn't break out the private school kids from the public school kids identified.
So I think there's two parts to the answer. The first is that the way that we set this up, because the desire of the superintendent was to provide funding to co-ops. And so that for all of the members who belong to a co-op, in e-grants, the money awarded to that district is going directly to the co-op. However, it is actually the school district that has the responsibility to calculate the equitable share that is due to all of the participants. And so the first part of the answer is the co-op doesn't have to do the calculation for non-public. The second part of the answer that is a little unfortunate is that when we set up the module for e-grants, we inadvertently set up so that the calculation at the school district level for this part was done the same way as it's done for IDEA funding currently. And that's not correct. This grant requires that that be done a different way. So we're having to revise that some. But again, the first part of this answer to you is that the co-ops do not have to calculate equitable share or arrange for that. That is done by the member school districts.
Thank you, Ken. That makes your explanation makes sense to how we've been talking about it with our superintendents. And so you're saying that the formula in there will be adjusted so that it reflects, again, that identified student in a non-public private setting, and those that are in the identified and in the public school setting.
Yeah, and kind of more importantly, and again, this is said in the grant itself, is that the calculation is done on the basis of the total number of children in the non-public setting that want services, and the total enrollment in the public school. It's not done on the basis of children who are covered under IDA or an IEP or anything like that. Basically done it's the same way as the other grant.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Ken and Jay, would you please just go into some of the uses that the grant allows? So there are some ideas on what these CARES dollars, these ESSER funds, can be used for.
Yeah, so some of the things we've been seeing is that we've seen extensions of classrooms that because of the need for social distancing and making sure that the students are safe, that they're hiring additional teachers so that they can cut down the classroom sizes and make sure that the kids are safe. Some of the other ones we've seen are new software packages of new curriculum that their current curriculum doesn't allow, or they can't really put it into an online format that would be effective for doing the remote learning. And so they're getting better in new curriculum so that involves the online component of it, so they can be responsive that way. So there's been quite a few. I think Ken probably can talk about more of like the facilities and the supplies, but those are the couple of the main ones that I've seen and heard of.
Thank you, Jay.
I think that, again, as Jay said, the potential uses as it is is defined in the Act are very broad. There's hardly anything. There are a couple things you can't do, like for example, you can't pay for union facilitation or executive salary of third parties and things like that. But more importantly, the Act requires that the activities being funded are being done because of the coronavirus, either in response to things that have already happened or in preparation for school opening and those kinds of things. And for the applications that I've reviewed, for those that I've sent back for revision, it's typically been for that reason that the activities aren't identified as being related to the coronavirus. And the second is that there's a requirement for a GEPA statement in this grant that's different than what we've seen in other grants, but I think will start to become common in all of the federal grants. And that GEPA assurance has to do with giving equitable access to all children. And in some cases, the way that the schools have completed that GEPA statement don't meet the standard of what the federal government requests that that statement say, basically. And so again, I've sometimes sent back saying, could you just add a little more about equitable access and non-discrimination?
Thank you, Ken. From Chelsea and Carmen in the chat box, it says, it's an enrollment question. It says, will those students who are not enrolled in a private school setting before child count in October be eligible to receive SPED services without waiting the year from CARES?
And I think Jack would be the best one to cover this, Jack O'Connor. Jack, are you on?
Yeah, I am, but I can't answer a SPED question. That's not my area.
Okay. Well, we are recording this and we'll make sure that we get an answer back on that. It's my understanding this is about timing as much as it is about a private school setting within the CARES release. And so we'll be able to do that. The other part of this, these dollars are for relief, like Ken and Jay have stressed. The other part is they have a shelf life of 2 years, which is interesting within that. I was on a call with 16 other state chiefs yesterday, and their federal liaison that is part of an association, and they're seeming to be looking to see how these dollars are being spent, if indeed another relief package might be coming forward. So they are going to be reaching into states and to schools specifically. That's why we wanted to share with you in the county level, in rural Montana, as much as in urban, to, if you have your finger on how schools are using these relief dollars, so that it might propel going forward another relief package that comes from Congress. So perfect. Any other questions regarding the ESSER dollars or any of the CARE relief funds?
So Elsie, this is Jay. I just want to add one more thing, just an extension to what you were saying about how the funds are intended to be there for relief. Just make sure that everybody understands that the supplement versus supplant provision does not apply to these, even though they're federal dollars. And so for those local activities that are, expenses that were related to, responding to or preparing for the COVID-19, that you can replace those expenses with these federal dollars, therefore making your local monies whole again. So that's just something different about this one.
Thank you, Jay. And Jack, I know you were on just for a little bit. Jack is our expert in our Title I delivery. Jack, do you have anything that you would like to share to the audience?
Thanks, Superintendent. Just remember that when you do start working with private schools, you do need to notify all of the private schools and homeschools within your schools to allow those entities to participate in the CARES Act funds. The county superintendents, I just appreciate all of you guys going back in and updating all of your non-public schools a second time in a calendar year so we could get these funds out. Thank you for that. And the forms and materials for districts and to send out, or if the county superintendent is the AR, are all located on the private school web app. And if you need help getting there, you can contact myself or Andy Bame at the office, and we can get you into that system.
Thanks, Jack. And again, we'll put all of our contact information after this call. So if you have any other further questions, one from Gail popped in. Hey, Gail, this is, are you going to cover the homeschool share of the CARES money?
So again, this is Ken, and I'll start and let Jack fill in if I miss anything. So in the request to go out and contact private schools to determine what equitable shares they would like, we include homeschool students. And I've seen quite a few of the applications that list students, and as opposed to a private school, it basically lists the name of the parents and the number of children that are being homeschooled. So again, the duty of the school district is to contact the homeschool students in their territory and determine if that parent would like to arrange for equitable services. Jack, did I miss something?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you. And in the chat box, Jack has gone ahead and posted that there, if you would like access to the private school web app to get a hold of our expert, Andy Beam, and there's an email that's posted. But once again, at the end of this call, we'll post the experts that have been on this call for that. Are there any other questions regarding the use of these relief dollars at this point?
I have a question, if I could. This is Denise with MASBO.
Hey, Denise.
I've always wondered this. So through this whole time, so there's an amount of the grant money that represents the equitable shares. Is that a correct statement? There's a dollar amount associated with those equitable shares. The money doesn't go to the private or non-public school. The services are provided. So I think that's all correct statements. And if it is, then how does a district document that the value of those services was in fact? How do you guys follow up on that?
So from the purposes of managing the grant and giving the money to the school district, we don't go and check to see that it's done, but I'll ask Jack to comment on that in terms of any checks that are made, and also about the ability for private schools to contact him if they feel that they're not receiving their equitable share.
All right, thanks, Ken. So the dollar amount for the private schools under the CARES Act is a proportional share in relation to what the district gets. So basically what you do is you would take all the public school students and the non-public school students, add those kiddos together, divide that into basically the amount of funding that the district gets, and then that'll determine a per pupil amount, and that's kind of the amount that would go out. So if the per pupil amount for a non-public school was $100 and the non-public school had 2 kids, they get $200 in services. And that's kind of the key thing, is it's services and in some cases supplies. So first of all, no funds can go to the non-public school. So if the non-public school wanted to take advantage of some tutoring services, they can arrange that with the district. The district would directly pay that person to do the tutoring, whether it was a person hired by the district or a third party. It could be a third party provider. Educational supplies, computers, all that stuff is purchased by the district and then given out to the homeschool. The district owns those things. They can take them back. In this case, they can also do cleaning supplies, which the district would purchase and then give to the non-public. It's the district's responsibility to spend the equitable share dollars up to that individual per pupil amount for each of the non-public schools. And they can keep track of that kind of in general in the budget pages in the CARES Act, but then it's on their own books to keep track of specifically in their own books to make sure those dollars are being spent. If the non-public school doesn't think they're being treated fairly by the public school district, then they can contact me. I'm the private school ombudsman, and then I would work on behalf of them to make sure that their complaint was heard, and then make sure that the public school is doing everything it needed to do to make sure it satisfies the requirements of the law.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Thank you, Denise. That was a great question. So Jack, another one has popped up and it says, do homeschools get a share of the money, or do they have to go to the schools to get their share?
They get an equitable share of the funds which are set aside for their use, but they can't directly get those dollars. So you can't pay or reimburse the non-public school for any kind of expenditure. So they would go through the consultation process with the public school district. They would discuss what their needs are. The district would then purchase those supplies, tutoring, whatever it was decided that was needed, and then that's how they would get those items, but no money exchanges hands.
Thank you, Jack. I think that would be it. Are there any other questions? I apologize.
Yeah, this is Kirk. I have a couple of questions around the equitable services distribution. First of all, you know, the notice that needed to be made available to homeschools and non-public schools, certified letter being sent fell upon the school district. Can the equitable services funds that are made available be used to help pay the cost of that? Just an example would be there's about 800 homeschools in the Flathead Valley area, and it costs $4.10 to send a certified letter to each one of those. And so each school district superintendent of the districts in the Flathead area were required to send that certified letter to request whether. And so that's about $3,000 worth of school district expense to be able to just be in contact with those for a second time during the year. So the question is this an allowable expense for to use some of the CARES Act funds to be able to pay for that front end expense? And then secondly, as we've looked at the Secretary of Education's guidance on you know, that the distribution be made basically to all non-public students versus to Title I students in the public school environment. Are we keeping track of exactly the number of requests that end up so that we can actually see how much funding of the CARES Act funding was actually shifted away from the use of public schools to non-public schools? I think that's an important thing for us to know, as it is in every state. I mean, every single state is in a variety of ways of implementing the ESSER funds and their distribution. Some states are saying they're not following the Secretary's guidance, and I know that our direction has been we're taking what is currently the guidance, and that's how we're implementing. But I would want us to be able to keep track of, you know, how many requests were made from all of the non-publics and how that number is different than what the normal requests have been made from non-publics, like at the beginning of the year for federal services, so that we'd be able to identify what that shift of funds actually is. And then the last, you know, question or maybe just comment is that the responsibility falls upon the public school to ensure that they follow all of the guidelines for the distribution of services. And there's even, you know, in place a system so that non-publics would be able to say they don't believe that they were treated adequately. And, you know, it's the administrators of those school systems, public school system, that are responsible for literally everything that I've talked about here on those three questions. So just maybe a comment from the office on the recovery of funds for having to make the contacts and the determination of the actual shift that in counting all non-public school students versus Title I in your public school.
So this is Ken. The question of directly funding the cost of mailing and stuff out to the private school people is one that I've not been asked before. We do have in the calculation of the amount that's due to private schools, the ability for school districts to deduct an administrative fee before calculating the amount that goes to schools. So in a sense, that cost is preserved for the district to pay for administrative costs. And if in the budget then for their school district, they included that as one of the expenses they're paying, I think that's acceptable. But I kind of reserve the right here for Jack to tell me I missed this one, or to go back and look at it to make sure that's correct. On the question of the amount of money that goes to private schools, yes, within eGrants, we'll be able to determine the amount of equitable share that was calculated throughout the state. And again, for the other discussion, we would trust that the school districts will provide those services to the private schools. So yes, I believe we would be able to state pretty accurately how much in services will be provided to private schools. Jack, anything?
Just one thing, the way that eGrants is set up, any kind of number like for calculation or numbers of students or anything like that out of eGrants can't be calculated until the application has been approved. So if you want the overall, the numbers of what that's going to look like, you know, for basically that cost shift, I guess, for a lack of a better term, we won't be able to get that to you until every district has an approved application in eGrants.
Thank you, Jack. Yep, and thanks, Ken.
Kirk, always good to hear your voice. Thank you for your leadership, especially through these unsettling times. So I do appreciate that. Looks like we had one more question that was in the chat box. It says, what if the CARES, what happens to the CARES money if a district does not apply? Can they send it to a special ed co-op?
So again, the grant that is being distributed on the basis of related services, the school district would simply have to complete the application for the funds, and they would be passed through to the co-op automatically.
Thank you, Ken. Any further questions on the disbursement? Here's another one. It looks like from Taylor. What about the schools that will be joining cooperatives as of July 1, or on the flip side, schools that are pulling out of cooperatives as of July 1?
Thank you for that question, because I had also had a private chat note asking me the same question. So I'll just answer it and not have to do all the typing. The CARES grant award is being done in this fiscal year. And therefore the basis for co-op membership is based on this fiscal year. And I totally understand that co-op membership may change, but we had to pick a point in time. And for those cases where a school district is leaving a member co-op, I have said to people who've asked this question, well, the CARES Act allows for reimbursement of expenses going back to March 13th. So the co-op, I think, has the first right for that money in terms of saying if we had any expenses we need to reimburse out of this pot that comes to us, then we do that first. And in terms of then saying, but we really hardly spent anything and we got lots of money left, each school district would have to try to arrange an agreement to say, okay, you're right, it's not fair that the co-op keep all of the money, and so therefore we as the co-op will transfer this amount of money back to you. And again, as I'd say, I think the first shot at this is for the school district and the co-op to come to an understanding that that is reasonable and fair. And if they're unable to reach an agreement to that extent, you know, I guess we could get involved, but I think the first advice would be, come on, can't you guys work this out? But the money that, the hard answer, I guess, is to say, for a school district that's leaving a co-op, the co-op will get the money passed through to them. For a school that is joining a co-op, they will get the money directly to their district. And then they would have to agree with the co-op to transfer money to them if that's the fair thing to do.
Thank you, Ken. If I understand, just plain and simple, it is about relationships.
Yeah.
A question has popped up. How many non-public schools do you list if you have homeschoolers from two different families?
This is Jack. I asked for clarification on that because I'm not sure exactly what they're looking for in the question. I was kind of waiting for something to pop back up.
Okay.
Because in Montana, in a homeschool, you can only teach your own kids. So that's what I need clarification on.
Thanks, Jack. Another one is, so we could base it co-op by co-op, but what do the individual boards decide?
And this is Ken, I'm not sure if I totally get this. Again, what will happen is the money for the related services grant will pass through to the co-op for any schools that are a member of a co-op in this fiscal year. And so again, could we base it by co-op by co-op? Again, if for a co-op to make an agreement with a school district on returning some of the money, or for the school district to give the co-op money because they're joining, would be a discussion between those two entities.
Thank you, Ken. I believe that was just for clarification, so I think you said it well. Any other questions that might pop up? Again, there'll be information, and we're very, very willing to answer any question or clarification on what has been said today. Thank you all. We have many heroes throughout all of the COVID discussion, and one of them has been with school nutrition. So I would like to have Tracy Moseman right now discuss and answer any questions you might have on how school nutrition has been deployed or currently will be through the summer months, and quite possibly a reflection on what it might look when schools reopen. So Tracy, please.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tracy Moseman, and I have just some highlights and information to share about all the good work that's been happening in nutrition here this spring and into the summer. The USDA has extended many of the national waivers currently through August 31st, so that will cover us through the summer. And our staff are currently working with task force members from the Flex 2020 work group to look at which type of school nutrition waivers may need to be applied for to be extended into the school year. Right now, we're operating under area eligibility, and this waiver allows local partners to serve meals to children during the health crisis and continue to do that regardless of where the children live, and that will be in place for the remainder of the summer. And schools do need to still apply for this waiver on a case-by-case basis if they have not already. And currently we have 12 Montana sites that are participating in area eligibility. We still have the non-congregate feeding waiver in place, and that also will go through August 31st. And that allows us to provide the grab and go meals that we've heard across the state have been so important to communities. The third waiver that is still in place is the parent guardian pickup waiver, and that provides that the children do not have to be present with the parent when the parent goes to pick up the meals. And that has been huge just in terms of not shuttling children back and forth into the public and increasing risk of exposure to the virus in some communities. And then the fourth waiver is regarding our monitoring procedures, and the OPI is implementing the desk monitoring plan for the summer program so that we don't have to be out traveling and doing site reviews in communities during this time of phased reopening. And then just really quickly, some important information that I think is good to have. We did pull some claim data, and I do just want to report that between the March and April 2019 time period compared to March and April for 2020, schools served about 1/4 fewer meals during that same time period, but the reimbursement to schools actually increased by almost $200,000 because schools were able to use that summer food service program instead of the regular school nutrition program. And the summer food service program does provide a higher reimbursement rate to school districts. So some fewer meals, but higher reimbursement, and meals are being served in very rural areas and lots of flexibilities in how that's happening. So we have a great staff on board, and schools across the state are doing an outstanding job of continuing to be flexible and responding to really quick changes with all of those waivers. Those changes are continuing to come in, and we are just so thankful for everybody's quick communication and fast turnaround to get all of those new programs and waivers put in place. I am happy to field questions. If there's detailed questions that I can't answer, I will be sure to take them back to our nutrition staff that are actually on another call right now and get those answers back out to you all.
Thank you, Tracy. Any questions of Tracy? Wow, A+ for the day. Great job, Tracy. Thank you. Any other questions that you might ask of our experts that we have, or any questions that we might be able to field to others who are not participating at this time? We're here to serve. We're here to put some certainty into what summer looks like as much as what reopening of schools are. So I'm going to move to Cheryl real quick. And Cheryl, if you just share, just for a couple moments, the task force and the good work that we're working on with Montana Learn Task Force as well as Montana Flex.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do that. So we have had 2 task forces underway with a diverse group of participants, looking at specifically what are those needs that are coming from the field that need to be addressed. And we will have out later this month high quality guidance for the reopening of schools. That was probably one of the key factors that came from the field, is that they need the official guidance from the OPI that they can take to use in their districts with their trustees, with their parents, with guidance. And so we should have that out. Superintendent Arntzen was very clear about the need for that very clear guidance from the OPI. So we've had, I believe, between the 2 task forces, approximately 85 participants from the field. They conclude today, and then next week there will be work being completed to take all of the comments, suggestions, information, and put that into a guidance document that is targeted to be released before the month of June is completed. And flexibilities have been identified as needed. Both Tracy talked already about going into this next school year, some of the nutrition guidances that are being requested, and there are many others. So we're working on that. We'll be working with the Board of Public Ed on where their responsibilities constitutionally lie. With requests to them, we'll be working with the U.S. Department of Education with with requests that need to go to them. And in addition, with Montana Learn, a heavy emphasis on safety and well-being of our students and ensuring that the guidance that goes to districts keeps first and foremost, not that it's not in Montana Flex, but the end result always is that we all put Montana students first. Their safety, their well-being, and their learning is paramount to the work that's coming out of the task forces.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And, you know, you've got Dr. Miller on, and Dr. Miller has taken part of this. We have all the associations that are part of the advocacy for education. Denise, also in your realm, thank you very much for helping us guide this. Number one thing is we would like to have a unified voice going out to all of our schools, wherever they might be, so that there isn't some disequilibrium of what that message can be. And so we're working very hard for a one voice and one message, and the state is listening. So I thank you so much for everything that you have done in all of this uncertain time. And even before that, there's a lot of leadership within our state, and especially from you at the county level. We're here to serve. There'll be more information of contact coming out. And please don't hesitate if you have a question or would like further clarification. I wish you all the best, all the health. And as our beautiful summer in Montana continues, let's make sure that it's a healthy one. With that, thank you all very much. Bye-bye.